Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. And today we have with us Marcus Taylor, who is the founder and CEO of Harbour. Marcus, welcome to the program.
Great to be here.
Hey, so I know you've got a very in-depth background, but give us a little thumbnail sketch of what brought you to starting your firm, Harbour, and what you focus on.
Sure. So Harbour. I started coding when I was about 10 years old, and I just found myself when I was sort of in my teenage years. I'd go home every evening and just be sort of building different MVPs, building prototypes, just to kind of understand, sort of get to grips with the world of online marketing and understand what worked and what didn't. And so by the time I was about sort of 18, 19, I had this collection of all these different websites that were actually making more money than my job was at the time. And so Harbour started as this kind of almost this holding company for all this kind of weird little ideas and concepts that I've had over the years, and over time it's sort of developed into this more, this sort of innovation studio, if you like, where Harbour today, basically every year we start up from scratch, we build a brand new business, and we have one rule, which is that each new business that we build has to be more ambitious than the last one we built. And the key kind of focus for us is basically solving interesting problems that unlock human potential through technology and automation. So that's the kind of the common thread that runs throughout all the ventures that we create.
So talk a little bit about that last statement, unlocking human potential through automation. I know that AI is a big thing in industry and business. I think even small to medium-sized businesses are looking into, how to automate marketing processes, how to automate inventory, and all the myriad ways that AI is used. But that intrigues me to say how to unlock personal potential. So how do you do that, and what does that focus on?
So a good example is probably our latest venture, Serena, which absolutely solves a human potential problem through automation. So Serena is basically a tool that we built to help people. Well, it was something that we built initially for ourselves to help us focus. So we were finding, with all these different software and tech projects we were working on, to actually get focused was quite an uphill battle. And so we ended up building this sort of tool internally where I basically said to my team, I want to be able to press a single button on my keyboard, and I want all of the conditions that enable me to kind of get to optimal focus and enter this sort of environment where I can really sort of focus and do my best work to happen. So what would that look like? Well, you would play AI-generated focus music. You would block distracting apps, distracting websites. You would set a timer. Like all these things that we know from various studies will increase a person's likelihood to get into deep focused work. We found that all of those things, they obviously worked, but to actually remember to do them, 5 times a day, 6 times a day, every time you want to get a piece of work done was very difficult. And so we built Serena as a way of basically you click a button and all of these things happen in the background. So we're using automation, we're using technology, but all of that is sort of a means to an end of just solving a very human problem, which is how do you focus and how do you just focus on the single most important thing for that day?
So I love that concept, and it makes me think of something like from the contrarian view. So I'm going to ask this question as a inquisitive mind and not as a detractor. But it's often been said, anything that's easy to do is easy not to do. So you've just broken down all of this focus and productivity and all of these things into like, I want to push a button and have all this happen. What is it that you then would help a user understand to then push the button and let it happen? Because what's easy to do is easy not to do.
I guess it's the thing that really sort of inspires me around this is I think it was B.J. Fogg from Stanford University. He had this model, behavior equals motivation multiplied by ability multiplied by triggers. And I think the whole concept around this was like, if you want to increase the likelihood of someone taking an action, whatever that might be, you kind of have these three different levers that you can pull. You can either increase their motivation, you can make them want to take that action more. You can increase their ability, so you can make it easier, which is what in the case of Serena, we've really sort of pulled this lever, rather than having to sort of, go to Spotify, play your focus music playlist, go to your Chrome extensions to block apps and put your phone on airplane mode, and all these kind of steps. We've kind of reduced that down to one click. And then there's the final piece, which is triggers, adding more kind of prompts to encourage a person to do that. And so that's another thing that we're sort of tackling with Serena, is because it's a piece of technology, we sort of designed it in a way where it's the first thing that pops up when you turn your computer on in the morning, and it's prompting you throughout the day to kind of really sort of focus. So there definitely is it's always going to be a challenge with these things. How do you sort of really sort of build it into a person's day? But from a sort of, if we look at what is the current situation, and is this product kind of a step in the, a step forward or a step backward, kind of just making sure like we're building things that are, a positive improvement for people.
It's really interesting that at the time of this recording this morning, literally within 1 hour ago, I left a early morning business networking meeting, and the speaker was talking about margin. And what is meant by that is we need to build a margin in our lives, whether it's financially, you can't live paycheck to paycheck. You need to have a little bit of margin to do what you need to minister to other people's lives and help them out and for your family, but also with time. And we can't be so booked and working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And to me, I feel like that is a lead into what you just said, which is my question is, how do you get people to do it? Well, they have to recognize that it would be a help for them, and then they have to want to do it. And I think that when people realize that maybe I don't have the margin built into my life I need, and maybe just that spot of time, that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and maybe that's now my question is, when people realize I need that, I want to do it, is there a period of time that you recommend with your app? Is this a 1 hour long process and then 4 minutes in they're going, I need to get back to work? Or is this like, hey, take 5 minutes a day and you're going to see wonders? What does that look like?
So, our approach is we sort of, from the research that we've done, we found like the optimal way of sort of structuring it is the start of your day, you pick one thing, one kind of major goal that you'd like to achieve that day. So this is very kind of consistent with, I guess, books like The One Thing by Gary Keller, like very much that sort of message. And then we're encouraging people to break that down into maybe 5 or 6 sort of subtasks that might take anywhere from kind of like 20 minutes to 60 minutes. However, this is. We were joking just before we jumped on this interview about the difference between kind of MVP and what works in practice, and this is very kind of what we found is very resonant of that difference in that this is what we thought is true, but what we're realizing now that we're getting more users for Serena is that people work in so many different ways, and what is technically optimal may not make sense for a lot of people with different styles of working. Because as much as we're trying to focus on habit formation and getting people using an optimal way of working, there's also a lot of unlearning that has to take place. We have to untrain people out of bad habits. So it's kind of this double-edged sword in that we can provide an optimal way of doing it, but that's really half the battle. A lot of it is kind of untraining bad habits.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess it kind of also gets down to knowing where you want to go and then realizing where you are right now. And if there is a gap between those two, then how do you fix it? And then this could help be part of that. So I really like that conversation, the focus that we just had there. And yeah, Gary Keller's one thing. I've read that. That's awesome. And you just think about, how about this? Have you ever read the book by Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand?
No, I've heard very, very good things about it.
You need to just jump on Amazon and grab that. It's a really good book. Many great principles. One of the ones that I was thinking of is he talks all throughout the book of when you confuse, you lose. So whether it's explaining an idea, a new venture, a startup, or marketing your product, you as the owner, the founder, you know every whiz bang thing, and Russell Brunson with ClickFunnels is famous for saying, you just don't want to have that really confusing, I don't know, I forget the phrase that he calls it, but it's just, it's confusing people with all of these high tech, I know, it just came to me, techno babble. All of the getting in the weeds of your product or service, whether it's technology or not, you as the founder know everything about it, and you can tell people every nuance of it, but you lost them at have got this cool thing. So when you confuse, you lose. And so I think that that's a really big thing for us to keep in mind. And we can have, the 20 things we need to accomplish today, but maybe we need to focus on that one or two thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hey, so you are known to have started one of your venture, Broker Notes, from ground zero to over $200,000 a month in revenue with almost no marketing budget. Now, we don't have 19 hours or 4-day seminar to go through all that, but what was that all about, and how did you do that feat with startup to very vibrant in hardly any funding or marketing budget?
So in a nutshell, I think what we did to enable that kind of growth was we challenged a lot of assumptions, particularly a lot of assumptions that in the SEO space, but also more kind of generally in business that were very unusual. So as an example, the general kind of consensus in the SEO community when we started Broker Notes, and to a large extent today, is that if you want to grow your SEO traffic, you have to create, amazing content, and it has, you need to go out and get someone to write that content. Whereas we kind of asked, well, is that really the case? Is there a different way that we could approach this? And long story short, we ended up basically writing an algorithm to write about 7,000 pieces of content. But we did this in a way where the content was arguably better than what a human could write. And so the big assumption that we found in this argument that the SEO community had was the assumption was that a automatically generated piece of content may not be as good as a human. Whereas we kind of flipped that on its head and said, well, what if automatic content was better than a human? And so we strived to then create that content, which gave us our competitive advantage. Now, we are sort of changing that model slightly today because the landscape is different, but that was what led to, such rapid organic traffic growth. And that was very kind of notable in Broker Notes being in the financial industry, where typically most of our competitors were paying for traffic. And in that industry, paying for Google Ads is very, very expensive. So we had this enormous edge by having a lot of traffic that was free, that we had sort of just taken a very different approach to build up. Another example being we challenged assumptions around the revenue model. So this was largely an affiliate-based revenue model. And most of the brokers that we were working with would come to us kind of saying, we'll offer you $100, $200, or however much for every lead that went through our website. And we went through this really kind of quite crazy time where one of our biggest brokers that was representing, I think, about 60% of our revenue, awful situation. They suddenly decided that they were no longer able to pay us. So we lost this biggest client, and we were kind of, almost wondering, like, is this game over? But this kind of kicked us into action to actually test, well, what if we just build our own revenue model? And we ended up testing out an auction-based model. So rather than the brokers telling us how much they would pay, we created this sort of blind auction, which I think in the space of about 2 to 3 months, ended up 10xing the revenue that we were generating. We had no extra traffic. The only thing that we had changed was how we were asking for brokers to pay us, and that resulted in over, I think it was around 10, maybe more, 10xing the revenue.
That's pretty amazing, and it made me think of back one of the first things you just mentioned, which is AI, with kind of, here's how we wanted to take this idea, and sure, we could get content out there, but if we can use some automation to get that jump started, that's huge. So you also mentioned venture capital, and you did it without taking funding. What is your position on getting or striving for venture capital? Because we all know from watching the shows on TV like Shark Tank, getting capital comes at a price, which is losing ownership, losing a voice in the company, losing some control, maybe even if it's not 51%, you have someone else watching over their money, their investment in you. So what is your position on striving for funding and venture capital?
I mean, I guess every market is different, and I definitely, I'm based in the UK, which is a very, very different landscape to the situation in the US. But at a kind of a very macro view, I strongly believe that the best investor that you can have is your customer. And with all of the products that we create at Venture Harbour, we have a goal that our customers, we fund the products by selling them early, and running off of the revenue that they generate. And the thing that I think works so well about that model is it has so much to do with product empathy. Like you develop so much empathy with your users that you're able to make the product better and reach this product market fit sooner. It kind of drives me slightly crazy when I meet other entrepreneurs here in the UK who, in those crucial initial 6-12 months of running their business, they're spending half their time, worrying about cap tables and learning how to create beautiful decks for Woo investors. And it just seems insane to me that why are you doing that when, you could be focusing on creating something amazing and listening to your users. However, that comes from a place of, obviously, we've been able to kind of create a few products, and I totally understand that it is hard, and I'm coming around slightly now to the view that with the right investors, if you've got smart money, people that can add a lot of kind of insight, either to the market or to the product, or add something beyond just money, then that would be the time where I would say, yes, it may make sense to take VC money, but it's nothing to do with the money. It's purely down to the sort of the holistic range of things that investor could bring to the table.
Yeah, that's a super, super good point. Because as with anything, you got to look at it from all angles. It's not just, I need money, yay, this guy's going to give it to me. There's other things to consider. So what do you think, let's kind of wrap up with the thought of when you're thinking about starting or launching a new venture, what are some things that you would recommend or have noticed people making mistakes of in the past that reduced risk? Because there's never a time of no risk, but it must be calculated risk. So how do you recommend people notice, plan for, and reduce risk?
So I think the one of the most kind of important things that we do to reduce risk when we're building new ventures is we basically just build things that we would use anyway. So I mean, if you're innovating within a large company, or you already have a company or some kind of product, building something that even if it doesn't become a separate product with its own customers, if it adds enough value to your existing business, that massively reduces the risk and the sort of the pressure of getting it right first time. That's basically our model for how we now innovate. We just build things for our other ventures, and then if it's something that adds value externally, then we roll it out. But I think something that's maybe more sort of universally applicable is, we have just over the years, we built up, I think it's like a 2 or 3 page document that just lists a bunch of questions that none of them are kind of like, particularly intellectual or tricky, but it's just asking questions like, am I going to like do I want to be with the people in this industry? Do I want to hang around with them? Is this an industry that is growing? And I think we've collected, maybe 40, 50 of these questions. And there's so many times in the past few years where I've had this, what I thought was this, amazing idea for a new venture. And I've run it through this list of questions and just been like, no, I actually don't think it ticks all, enough of the boxes. And I mean, in terms of where we sort of got those from, I think Vern Harnish, his one-page strategic plan, there's lots of good stuff there. Peter Thiel, I think his book Zero to One, we pulled a lot of the questions from there. But it's really just kind of, we've, over the years of reading different business books, we've just picked up on kind of questions here and there that we liked and wanted to use as sort of litmus tests, and just built our own collection, which has been really helpful.
Yeah, I love it. And of course, I think we could continue talking on for hours and hours, but then we would get a little bit off track on that one thing. So let's keep it tightly dialed in here and just close with what's the best way that people can reach out and learn more about Venture Harbour.
So ventureharbor.com is sort of the main place with everything. And yeah, you can contact me through the website.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Marcus. It was great talking with you and get to know your business approaches and successes.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks for that, Mike.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.